Hey guys, today we've got this Featherlite XT200 by Weed Eater. It's a curved shaft string trimmer. Doesn't start, couple other problems. Also, one of the fuel lines is missing. I believe that's the Purge line. And these hoses, they're rock hard. As for the fuel tank, it's pretty nasty inside. Fuel line's rock hard, and yeah, there's no filter on the end. Okay, so first things first, let's get the air cleaner off and start taking apart the housing. There we go, carburetor's removed. Let's just cut this fuel line. As Terrell says, it's hard as a carp. Look at that. I cut it and it just pinches. That's terrible. Wow. Unreal. Get the throttle cable out. What's that in there? What did they shove in there? Like some kind of an adapter? What is that? Huh. Interesting. Well, hard plastic straw. As you can see, there's no fuel filter on the end of this, and this was not the return line. This is the feed line. Oh, it's stuck in there pretty good. Just taking it out because I want to clean the choke and everything. There's corrosion and stuff on it, so I want to clean it up, spray some anti-corrosion film on it, make it look a bit better. Same with the back. It's got a fair amount of corrosion as well, so I want to clean all that up. Make it look a little bit more presentable. Here we have the carburetor. I'm assuming that all the problems with this stems from this little guy here. The original owner that I picked this up from, he's just offering it for free. He didn't really have much to say about it. Just said free string line trimmer, weed eater, and first come first serve. I'll take the ad down. He did not have much else to offer. I didn't ask any questions. The price was right, and from the ad all I could see was it a little dirty and that it was missing a fuel line. So I'm assuming that the gaskets inside are pretty petrified as well. So let's take it apart and take a look and see what's going on inside. Afterwards, I'd like to come back and spray this out with some carb cleaner, because the fuel that was left in there wasn't much, but it's all gelled up on the bottom and it smells like paint thinner. Okay, let's start. Take off the primer bulb. Although the primer bulb seems to be okay. I can feel it blowing out. And it seems to be sucking. I can feel a bit of suction. But let's take it apart. Take a look at the gaskets anyway. You can get all this in the ultrasonic cleaner. Here we go. Let's see, it's still flexible if it's hard. Actually, still seems pretty flexible. These flaps here, this one here and this one here, they should be flat. And they are. They're not protruding at all. So this I think is actually pretty good. Let's just separate the primer bulb off. Take this gasket and diaphragm off. Looks like there's a little bit of varnish on the edge. So we'll put this into the ultrasonic cleaner and see how well it cleans up that. But the passages all actually seem pretty clear to my eye, but we'll clean it out with the ultrasonic and then we'll try spraying some carb cleaner through it, make sure all the passages are completely clear. Take off the back. Check this diaphragm. Did not like that sound. Yeah. This one, geez, really hard. I'll move my microphone close by. Rock hard. So I'm going to order a new diaphragm kit where we can replace this and hopefully get this one running. Absolutely rock hard. Howdy. Howdy, how are you? Child just got home. Funny story about him, actually. He just celebrated his 16th birthday. Hey, look at that. A red subscribe button. So if you guys made it this far in the video, hit that subscribe button and also give it a thumbs up. Now on to more. Funny story about him, actually. He just celebrated his 16th birthday. So in celebration, he got himself a little bit of cash and used it to buy an 80cc two-stroke engine, which we attached to his bicycle to turn it into a little moped. And we got it running yesterday. And unfortunately, of course, the chain slipped off and caught on the spokes and took apart the rear wheel. That one won't be going until we get another wheel or we get a little bit of a larger frame, because it was supposed to be for a 24. We kind of fit it to an 18. It worked. till it didn't. Long story, but I'll get into it another time. Anyway, let's check the needle and seat. Look at this. This screen in here, it's very clogged up. So there's not going to be much passing through here. So we'll take apart the needle. And be careful, there is a spring under here. I'm doing this in a bucket because if I drop anything, it goes in the bucket. But if you lose any of these parts, basically forget it. It's gone. Because these are all very, very tiny. So you want to keep them in some form of a contained area. And here's the spring. When these springs screwing and disappear, you never find them. They're gone forever. Ask me how I know. I've lost a lot of springs like this. The needle actually looks really good. It's not swollen, so it should be doing the job just fine of letting fuel through. Too bad that screen most likely is the problem of not letting fuel through, along with that rock hard diaphragm. Maybe I'll be able to put this in a bath to rejuvenate it. That would be nice if I could do that. See if we can separate this gasket without destroying it. That would be nice. There we go. Coming off just fine. Oh no, of course. A little bit stuck on. Although honestly, what's stuck on doesn't look like it'll affect it at all. So we'll clean that up a little bit. Well, besides the obvious, I don't see much other reason why this carburetor shouldn't run once we get everything all cleaned up and put back together. So let me get this into the ultrasonic, see if I can rejuvenate this diaphragm, and hopefully we can get this thing started. And if not, then I'll have to put an order in for a carburetor kit. I'll most likely put an order in for a carburetor kit anyway, maybe even a replacement carburetor. So I'm just going to put this in the ultrasonic and we'll be right back. Okay, so 10 minutes in the ultrasonic should be enough for at least one cycle. Then we'll come back and we'll check it out and see if it needs another 10 minutes. All right.
And the UK steel industry employed twice as many people. Buckling-related businesses generated at least £5.4 billion for the economy and sustained.
All right, let's take a look. These I doubt will need to go through for another cycle. So I'll blast these off with air to dry them off. This should all brush off. But that's not what we're interested in. Well, there's still a little bit of debris in there, but it's not too bad. But overall, it actually looks pretty good. Leftover gasket comes off easy now. I think I'll give it another 10 minutes in the bath. That should be pretty good. Let's check that diaphragm. Oh, much better. Much better. It's way softer. Look how much softer this is. Before it had no flex at all to it. So I'm going to give it another 10 minutes in the bath. And that should rejuvenate it quite nicely. Varnish is coming off. So whatever doesn't come off after the next 10-minute bath, I'll just brush off with a small plastic brush, and I should take it right out. These plates are cleaning up. Not too bad. Unfortunately, this is some pretty bad rust on here, so it's a little pitted. But overall, the corrosion's not too bad on this. I mean, it could be worse. I mean, it looks like this machine was slightly cared for, somewhat. Wasn't left outside to the elements. So there is hope for it. And I mean, it is a unit from 2007, I believe was the year of manufacture on it. I'll have to check the sticker on it. This right here, the sticker on it right there. This isn't coming out too bad either. I'll probably use one of my brass brushes on this, clean it up, or even a wire wheel and clean it up. But I'll give this another 10 minutes in the bath, and we'll see you then.
Related businesses generated at least £5.4 billion for the economy and sustained.
Let's get this carburetor reinstalled and rebuilt. So I hit these with the wire wheel, and I think they came out fantastic. I don't know if you remember before, I'll make a split screen of a before and after. But I think they came out really good. All right, let's get this carburetor put together. So put the pin in the lever. Put the spring in. Oops. That's okay. Try that again. Maybe we'll just use two hands to do this instead of trying to do it all one-handed. Spring. As I said, if they spring out, that's it. They're gone. You saw that little tiny sprout, that little tiny movement, and it went flying. Come on. Come on, spring. Oh, my hands didn't want to cooperate. There we go. Make sure this pin wants to cooperate. This is unfair. Come on, needle. Get in your home. Why don't you want to go in your home? There we go. That's seated. Magnetic tips. They can be a blessing and a curse. This is going to be great for the bloopers reel. Oh my god. I can't get it in now. Oh, and there goes the arm. That's okay, the arm can fall down there. I'm just more worried about this spring. It does not want to cooperate. Oh, come on. Okay, springs in. I don't want to knock over the spring. Wow! Did you see that? I couldn't have done that if I tried. That was fantastic, and I caught it on camera. It's actually the first two-stroke carb I've worked on personally. And honestly, what a pain in the arse. Oh. Well, unfortunately, when I cut it, is because the spring that I was working with, well, it did exactly what I didn't want it to do. It sproinged, and it went sailing off, and unfortunately, I have to order a carb kit for this so I can get another spring, and it'll come with a gasket and whatnot. So it's not lost. I mean, the spring's lost, but all this isn't lost because this I can always reuse in another carburetor at a later time, as well as the metering diaphragm. So this isn't a big deal. Well, it is sort of a big deal, but not a big deal because I can reorder the spring and the whole kit to get everything all put back together. Well, it wasn't too bad up until that point, but I mean, it might be a day or two before it comes in, and then we can get this carburetor reassembled. But in the interim, we can always go back over there while I'm waiting on the diaphragm kit, and we can always see if that will run. Okay, so I've got my two-stroke mix. Just going to pull some up into my syringe. There we go. Pour some into the intake. There we go. Should be enough to start it. Okay, let's give it a pull. Oh. Okay, it wants to go. I'm going to put a little bit more in the cylinder. All right, let's see. Almost. And there we go. She runs. Beauty. All right. I'm going to get a carb kit for it. That's awesome. Good to see. Okay. So got a carburetor kit. And unfortunately, while we were building the bike for my kid, this screwdriver has a magnetic tip. And he grabbed this screwdriver out of this bin. And unfortunately, one of these little screws was stuck to it. The problem is, it was a screw that sat on top of the plunger for the needle. Since that screw's lost, unfortunately, this carburetor has become parts. So I ordered a new one. Let's get this one installed. Here's the kit that came. As you can see, it came with the standard Chinese spark plug, carburetor, two different types of fuel filters, fuel line, air filters, primer bulbs, a new throttle linkage, and new gaskets. Those gaskets will come in very handy. See if it came with anything else. Not quite sure what this is for. I always do like the mandatory Chinese spark plug. This does give me a little bit of a laugh. Interesting story regarding these Chinese spark plugs. The engine that my son got, his came with one, which was a replacement for a CJ8. Good thing I had the Champion CJ8. Needless to say, the plug that was shipped with it, it had basically no gap. Not too dissimilar from this one, which has basically no gap as well, only it was actually touching the electrode. We couldn't figure out why it just wouldn't run, but as soon as we put in that CJ8, bang, she fired up, and then that's unfortunately when the chain slipped and caught the rear spoke of the tire and basically destroyed the rear rim. But, as I said, we got a new frame and the bike's running mint. Yeah, not the biggest fan of these Chinese spark plugs. So before we begin reassembly, these parts, they're really cleaned up nice under the wire wheel. Right, so we'll begin reassembly. This plate slips in the slot in the back. Then the choke lever, there's a slot right here that the choke lever fits right into. And it'll sit just like this. We get the first bolt in. This is the one without the hardware attached to it. Now the one with the metal gasket and ring. And that's how the choke will work. Before we put the carburetor onto the air filter, we got to make sure we put the gasket on in the right orientation. You'll see a small dimple. There's a small passageway. You have to make sure that this passageway is clear or the engine won't run. So as you can see in the gasket, there's a small hole. We make sure it lines up. And if you look on the engine, you'll notice right here, there's another small hole which lines up right here. So then we have this gasket, which goes on the opposite side of the carburetor. Line up the hole. Now we can put it on the air filter housing. Oops, lost the other gasket. Put that one back on. Now we can put it onto the engine. Now this is just threading into plastic. Oh. There we go. Now we'll tighten these down by hand. So you just need to snug it up. Next, make sure that the choke still works. That's not too tight. It seems to be working just fine. Now we put the air baffle. Then an air filter. This is one of the new ones. I will oil it. Doesn't fit all that well. Doesn't fit as well as the original. Let me check. Let me compare it to the original. No, I would say it's not too dissimilar. It fits about the same. The original's a little bit more snug, but it fits about the same. So we'll just change this out for a new one. Now the cover. Get back on there. There we go. And as before, you're screwing into plastic, so don't go too tight because you can easily strip out the plastic. So next, let's take off this back cover, both to clean it, then to take off the muffler so I can take a look at the piston on the exhaust side. I did see it on the intake side, and it looks really clean. But let's check it out on the exhaust. So again, 3 mil, and there's 5 of them. 2, 3, 4, and 1 on top. Now this back cover should come off. There we go. Now let's get this fuel tank off for cleaning. Again, 2 more 3 mil. Oops, it's safe. It didn't break. It hit me in the foot. I was about to say that the gas tank has these little collars in. Now with the back cover off, we can even take a look at the condition of this engine. So let's take a look. Well, the connecting rod looks really good. Old fuel in the bottom, although that could be the fuel when we started it. So let's see how nice it turns over. Yeah, it feels really nice. Don't see any kind of rubbing. Not a bad little unit. Alright, so it looks like I'm going to have to take the rest of it apart. That's the front cover as well, which means I likely also have to take the handle apart. That's fantastic. Because there's too many screws, I'm switching to my impact. And these are all, again, 3 mil. Now the other side, 2 more. Set the engine free. Actually holding onto the back of the engine right now. And there we go. Okay. Going to slide the engine out. And then on the switch, we're going to disconnect the wires. If I can get them off. Hopefully now you see the wires I'm disconnecting. They're just off the switch. But they're on there good. There's one. Second one. Looks like the second one, I'm not going to have a choice but to replace a spade connector on it. The end was actually bent up and tucked in under here. When I tried to move it out so that I could get it past this, so I could get this off, unfortunately, it just snapped right off. So I'll just have to crimp on a new spade connector for this. Not a big deal. But there we go. The engine's out. Now we can inspect the exhaust port. All right, so let's take a look at this exhaust. Just gotta get this spring off. Oh, this is such a treat. Why couldn't they use bolts? Why do they have to use these silly springs? There we go. That side's off. And now that side's off. All right, so let's check the spark arrestor screen. It's pretty clear. Well, the moment of truth. Let's check the piston on the exhaust side. Well, I like what I'm seeing on the piston. It's clear. Alright, let me see if you can see it on camera here. I don't see any scoring on the piston at all. It looks fantastic, actually. It actually looks really good. I don't see scoring on the opposite side of the wall. In fact, this looks perfect. Let's get this engine back together and running. Alright, let's get this muffler back on. You know, there's got to be an easier way of doing this. This is crazy. Who thought of this design? They should be... Well, I'm not advocating violence, but I'm telling you, sometimes engineers make me nuts. There we go. That's back on. Let's get the motor back installed. But first, actually, let's clean up a little bit of this. It's kind of gross. I think that's the best I'm going to get it without taking it apart and cleaning it piece by piece. So let's get this engine back installed. Now that the engine's out of the way, let's change this recoil rope. It's unfortunate, it's a little frayed up. Plus we can give this a little bit of a cleaning. So pull the rope all the way out. I actually found a brake shoe from a Flywheel. Fits right in here. Absolutely perfect. And there we go. It breaks. I just need to get a 1/4 inch. Take that off. Now we can take the rope out. So to try to make it easier to pull it all the way through, I'm actually going to melt the two ropes together. That way it forms a single rope so we can pull it straight through. Now you don't want to pull too hard because it still can break. They're not one rope. It's just to make it easier to pull it through. There we go. All the way through. Now we can pull it through to measure the same amount. And there you go. Then we mark it. Pull it back through to the blue mark. Cut that off. Make sure we burn it so it doesn't fray. Take it, loop it around. And then back over the screw. We pull through the excess to tighten it up. Let me place the screw back. So then we're just going to loosen this a little, just so I can massage the rope around just to tighten it up. Now that's nice and snug, we'll tighten this down. And then the part we burned, just pull it apart. Take the old rope out. Take the new one. Tie a knot. Pull it through. Then we can release the brake and let it retract. And there you go. Recoil rope changed. Didn't even have to remove the recoil. All right, let's give this thing a little bit of a cleaning. I put the other half through the ultrasonic cleaner and then blasted it off with the air gun. It came out great. I did the same with the gas tank. Now inside, that cleaned out actually pretty good. I blasted it out with the air gun, but there is still a little bit of crud left in there at the bottom. I think you can just make it out on camera. Unfortunately, I can't get it to focus on anything but the nozzle. But there is still a little bit of crud in there. Whether that's going to pose a problem or not, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to lean along the sides of maybe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some straight gas in there, shake it around and see if I can dislodge it and rinse it out. I sprayed some WD-40 into it and then used the nozzle to rub the bottom. Look at that. That's nasty. Quite likely the filter would have caught that, but why add a point of failure to the system? Yeah, you can see the crud's off the bottom now. It's all floating in solution. So I'm just going to dump it into my used gasoline bin. Looking much better. Now I need to get that tab off. All right, let's get this engine mounted. It's get the switch reinstalled. There we go. Now the engine. Get these cables on. Sorry if I'm blocking your view. It's not intentional. I don't have much choice, unfortunately. What I did was I've got a donor engine and I cut the kill wire, and it's got an angled clip or it's got an angled spade connector, and so I just cut it, soldered it, and heat shrinked it on. There, bend that up. Right now, to get the metal engine put in. There we go. There's two different types of screws. There's these ones. These are the fine thread. These ones are when you're going into the engine itself. And we'll be putting in 4 of those to hold the engine to the cover. Then there's these screws, which have a coarse thread. And these are for when you're screwing into the plastic. Fine thread here, 3 millimeter. I'm going to snug it down just to hold the engine in place so I can let it go from the back. There. Perfect. Opposite corner at the top. Bottom corner. Now opposite side, top corner. You don't want to go too strong because you're screwing into aluminum and you can easily strip out the threads. Next, let's get the handle reinstalled. Okay, so this comes out the bottom of the handle, loops under a passageway underneath, which is very finicky to get it on. There, connect the throttle cable to the carburetor since it's loose. Must have slid up a little. There's that side. Not so finicky when it's in the right spot. Take out the spider eggs, although I'm sure these are long vacated. Four coarse thread screws. Now we're screwing into plastics. You just have to snug them. There we go. Now let's get the back cover on. Now if you lost any of those grommets, if they had fallen out, now you put them back in. And again, we're just screwing into plastic. Now the second one. Fuel tank's now remounted. I'll get the back cover installed. So now the last coarse thread screw, which goes into the top, right here. And finally, 4 fine thread screws. Let's go right here. Now all we have left is to route the fuel lines. So first, as you see, we have 2 tubes. This one at the back, furthest away from the primer bulb, that tube is going to actually draw fuel from the fuel tank. This tube, closest to the primer bulb, that's actually the purge line, which returns fuel back to the fuel tank. So let's start with the far one in the back, which is the feed line. All right, so we cut some of the tubing, cut it on an angle. That's so we can get into the fuel tank hole easier. You feed it in. There we go. There. The other line is unfortunately a little bit too small to use. And this one's just too much of a pain to go through the other way, this hole. So cut that off. Put this on the feed line. Might as well, since it's here. That's the one we were planning on doing. Pull that out. There we go. Now make sure that you leave enough that you're going to make it all the way to the back. This way, make sure that the fuel filter is always sitting in the fuel. So we put the fuel filter on. Maybe, if it wants to cooperate. Although you want it to be snug. You don't want it coming off. And then this. Push it all the way into the tank. Now this line's too small. So now the hose that we cut off, I'm going to put through the other hole. The same idea. Cut it on an angle. And make sure it's on a nice fine point. So I can grip it when I put it through. There we go, got it through. Now I'm going to pull it a little bit extra on this. Cut off the angled part. Place that on. Now this, being a return line, doesn't have to be anything special, so I'll just cut it right inside the tank. There we go. All right, let's add a little bit of fuel and see how all this works. There we go. That should be more than enough fuel. This is 40-to-1 mix 2-stroke. Now let's see. Is it working? There we go. Everything seems to be working perfect. Drawing fuel up and pushing fuel down. Perfect. It's working exactly as it's supposed to. All right. Next step. Let's get it outside and try it out. All right, we're outside. It's morning. Let's give this thing a try. Primer bulb's still working fine. Choke is on. Switch is on. All right, let's try it. Oh, she popped right away. All right, half choke. Let's open it up. Okay, she's running. I don't even see any real need to adjust the carburetor. It's running fantastic. All right, let's give it a try. I'll just shut it off and make sure that button works. Perfect. Let's give it a try. Okay, choke is off. Let's try it. Beautiful. There's a stump here, so I can't get it with the lawnmower. So how about that, eh guys? Nice simple repair. We got the whole casing apart, replaced the fuel lines, cleaned it all up, changed the carburetor, replaced the air filter, cleaned out the gas tank, new fuel, and runs perfect. All right guys, see you in the next one.